This is Dan, and this is the Napkin Academy. I want to welcome you all. Today's lesson is going to be one of my real favorites. We're introducing an entirely new concept today, the concept of the vivid forest. And I'm just going to let that be a little bit of a mystery for the time being, what that means. We're at a major milestone in our progress through the material of blah, blah, blah and vivid thinking. So I wanted to take a second and just review where we are and where we're going. We started out by recognizing that our world tends to be noisy and unclear, and our first tool that we explored months ago was our blahblometer that helped us kind of parse through that. Then over the last couple of months, we've explored a pathway to help us get out of this world of blah, 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 which we called vivid grammar, and we concluded that last week. Well, now we're moving on to the third part, our ultimate destination, which I'd like to think of as a place where our ideas are so vivid and so bright that they become absolutely clear and absolutely unforgettable. And so what is the tool that we're going to use as we move into this third major step? There's a simple idea behind what I'm about to share with you, and it's this. We can turn a rough idea into something amazing simply by being vivid. And I think a vivid way to explain that is with some pictures. Here we have a lump of coal. Now let's say that this is the way many ideas begin. They're kind of messy. There's a lot of pieces there. We know they have high potential, but let's face it. We look at a lump of coal and nobody really wants to touch it. Not very attractive. But this is where our ideas start. Lots of little pieces, undifferentiated all over the place. Well, what we're going to do is use this vivid forest tool to take our lump of coal idea, yes, and turn it into a diamond. And what's interesting about this, of course, is that a pile of coal and a diamond, in one way, are exactly the same thing. They're both just 100% carbon, but in two very different forms. One of which nobody wants to touch, the other one nobody wants to let go of. Question you might ask me is, how are we going to do that? That sounds pretty complicated. Well, it's not going to be, because what we're going to do is introduce a new tool that sits on top of what we've used in the past, combining our verbal mind and our visual mind to put together an idea that, as we think it through, takes advantage of both. So I want to share with you how the vivid forest is going to work and where it comes from. So imagine that this treasure map represents really our entire journey, and as we said, we started in a place where we're often in the middle of too much noise and too much information for any one idea to become very clear. What I'd like to do with us is imagine that there's a place we can step out of that noisy world for a little while and imagine our ideas in a calmer way, perhaps a quieter way, a more thoughtful way, so that we can really make sure that they're vivid, so that when we return to our very noisy business world, we have something that is going to be unforgettable that we bring with us. And the example that I like to use, the analogy that I like to use, is we're going to create a quiet forest where we can work, where literally we can see the forest and the trees. And what I mean by that is we're going to have a central idea as a central tree. And then as a kind of a grove or a stand of trees around that, we're going to have 6 helping ideas that support it. We're going to walk through this forest and spend some time walking around it, looking at each of the trees, and then coming out on the other side with a very clear and vivid idea. I wanted to start with a bunch of examples, because I know that what I'm talking about is real high concept. So let's make it real right away. Imagine if someone had said something like this to you, or you saw a sign that said this: "Please separate waste into appropriate receptacles. This will increase both the efficiency of the waste management process and long-term environmental sustainability." Well, that's a big statement that sounds pretty powerful. What would happen if we made a vivid version that said that? The visual explanation, the visual summary of recycling. Let's try another one, another simple one. I want you to get a sense of what I'm after here. Here's another sign we might see. For health, environment, and safety reasons, please refrain from smoking tobacco products in this facility. Okay. What would happen if I just did that? Which is the one that activates my mind faster and perhaps is more memorable, and I have a clearer idea of what the underlying thought is? Both are good. The words are good and the picture is good. I want to skew towards the picture. Let's do one more. Something that any of us who've traveled have seen. Imagine we saw this in an airport. Attention! Please prepare to be terrified, humiliated, and made to feel like a criminal. Remember, you have nothing to fear. Yes, this is the image that we see when we travel to a new place. And I don't know about you, but I don't think that I'm a criminal. But every time I see this, I don't think happy thoughts. I now start to think, oh, I better have my stuff together. This is about as vivid an image as I can imagine. So those are some simple, quick examples of where we can take a big idea, a lump of coal idea, and turn it into a very crisp idea by using visual thinking and the vivid forest. Let me now give you some big examples. Real-world projects, real-world work that I have done, some of which is new to you, some of which I've shared. Very quick review. A couple of months ago I was asked by the American Accounting Association and the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, along with the United States Department of the Treasury, to help clarify the future of accounting education. What the American Accounting Association had done is put together a 225-page book called The Pathways Commission, illustrating the future of education in accounting. As I went through this book, it was really something to go through because, as I say, it was 200+ pages that looked very much like this. There would be an idea, there would be a lot of supporting points, then there'd be some bullets to support that, and then we'd go on with some recommendations and continue. And as I say, this went on for a lot of pages. And the ideas in it are spectacular. But the task was to present this in 15 minutes. So I said, let's use the vivid forest and let's go ahead and give form to the idea. So here is what I ended up doing. I came up with a symbol that represents the 7 main ideas of pathways, and I put them together in the form of this sort of beehive as a memorable, vivid example to pull everything together. Here's why. Because as you went through the 200 pages, you realized that what the recommendations were based on were 7 different ideas about academic approach to accounting. Our profession, our institutions, our faculty, our curricula, our students, our data, and our process. So this I went through the forest process to identify what were the 7 main underlying ideas. Continuing with the forest process, I recognized, along with the American Accounting Association team, that it would be very difficult to approach any one of these pieces by themselves because the fact is all 7 of them are highly interlinked. And if you look at any one recommendation, it impacts the recommendations for the rest. So here we have a very typical, complex business challenge. But I said, let's use the vivid forest now, the tools that we're going to be exploring for the next several lessons, and come up with a vivid visual summary of the 7, and that's where this sort of honeycomb approach came in. There is one central idea, our profession, which is surrounded by 6 supporting ideas. So I made a picture, and here's the picture that summarized it. And then the entire presentation simply became a matter of saying, this is our picture, this is our kind of forest. What we're going to do is look at these one by one and make our way through, starting our journey in the center, moving all the way around, and coming out the other side. And to give you a quick example, we began with the idea in the middle, which was the accounting profession, and we came up with yet another sort of visual summary of this idea based on the following thought. If we're going to change the profession of accounting in a positive way, it will become important for accounting to believe in itself and act as a learned profession. Well, what the heck does that mean? Well, it turns out that if you look at accounting today, it's really broken up into 3 different disciplines. The discipline of research, the discipline of teaching, and the discipline of practice. So here we have researchers, here we have educators, and here we have people who actually work for Deloitte and Touche or one of the other consulting companies. So this is the way it is today. But in order to be a learned profession, we're going to have to find a way to more effectively combine all three of those disparate disciplines. So now what you see is we've taken rough ideas, conceptual ideas, pile of coal ideas, and turned them in to diamond-like, simple visuals that intrigue the mind and want us to understand more and are memorable. Let me give you another example. Example B. Similar type of situation and using the visual forest to come up with a different approach. One of America's largest healthcare companies is essentially it's a hospital and insurance chain called Kaiser Permanente. Anyone in the United States has definitely heard of Kaiser. For those of you outside the United States, this is one of our biggest groups with tens of millions of members. Now, Kaiser typically talks about itself in the following way: offering integrated healthcare solutions for over 65 years. Well, you know, if I'm sick, let's just say I feel really lousy, and I just really want someone to take care of me. Do I really care that this is an integrated healthcare solution for a long time? I'm like, what? That really doesn't mean anything to me. This is a lot of terminology, integrated healthcare. Look, I'm sick. I just want to be well. So one of the things that I've done with Kaiser over the last couple of months is actually work on a new series of storylines to make it very clear what are the benefits of Kaiser Permanente's offerings. And here is the vivid story that I derived by going through the vivid forest process. Here's the way the story goes. Imagine if I'm feeling very healthy and I'm strong and I feel good and I take good care of myself. But I start walking along one day and boom, I hit a little bump. Ouch! And I hurt myself. With the way that most healthcare is provided in the United States, things get worse because I have to visit one doctor to get one piece of information, a specialist to find something else, then I have to go to the clinic to get my shots, then I have to go to the imaging center to get my x-rays, then I have to go to the pharmacy to get my prescription, and then I have to go to the insurance company to try to get all of this paid for. The fact is, I might as well just lay on the ground. I already hurt bad. By the time I go through healthcare, I hurt even worse. It's a nightmare. The standard system is terrible. So now let's try a different way. Imagine if I were to stumble, but I had Kaiser behind me. Kaiser will serve as a kind of a mattress. I'm still going to fall, but oh, I don't feel so bad when I fall because now I've got an entire integrated system of all of the people that I'm going to need to interact with: the doctor, the radiologist, the specialist, the insurance agent, the pharmacist, etc., all in one place to a single integrated electronic patient record that makes sure that every one of these people knows me and knows exactly what my problem is and what each other is doing. Where this takes me then is now I understand what integrated healthcare really is. This is the vivid idea. I am taken care of by all of the people in one place. Big example C, one that we've touched on in a previous lesson very quickly. This sort of typical business presentation, the message was delivered through a series of bullet points. What if we could do this and what if we could do that? And again, it's like our lump of coal. There are a lot of really great ideas in these points, but they're lumpy. They're undifferentiated, they're not exciting, they're not put together. So what we did is we said, let's make this truly vivid by going through the forest process, the result being the following. Our healthcare organization is based on 3 different entities: hospitals, doctors groups, and insurance groups, each one of which has different types of technology underneath them. What makes the most amount of sense if we're going to combine these groups is to go ahead and combine those digital platforms underneath. And if we do this well, we will have been able to figure out exactly how to address changes in the American healthcare system. So what we did is we went from a whole series of bullet points and put them into a single, vivid, memorable picture. How did we do this? I've given you the examples. Now let me walk you through how the vivid forest actually works. What I'd like all of you to do now, and I'm going to take a break while you do this just for a moment, I would like all of you to go grab a sheet of paper. I'll give you the time it takes to do it. I'd like everyone to go grab a sheet of paper and a pencil or a pen, because you know how we like to do things at the Napkin Academy. I'm not just going to give you the tool, I'm going to ask you to draw the tool along with me. So I'm going to erase everything I have on this page so far. Imagine that my computer screen here is the blank sheet of paper that you have in front. You've been with me long enough, most of you, to know that the way we begin drawing any kind of a problem-solving picture is starting very simple and just drawing a circle. So what I'd like you to do is draw a kind of a medium-sized circle right in the middle of your piece of paper. This is the central tree of our vivid forest. Now what I'd like you to do, and this is going to be a little bit tricky, is I'd like you to do as best as you can, sort of divide that circle up into 6 pieces, 6 arcs. So what I typically do is I divide it in half vertically and then kind of just give my best estimate for how to divide up the remainder. So we're going to divide this circle up into 6 pieces. Not full slices as we did when we did the 6x6. This is a similar model, but a little bit different, because now what I'd like us to do is draw 6 more overlapping circles. These are the 6 surrounding trees of our vivid forest. So now you should all have something that looks more or less like this. You'll notice what it is it's actually the intersection of 7 circles, because there are 7 underlying ideas in the vivid forest. The first one, and the way I'd like you to label your circle in the middle, is a vivid idea is always visual and verbal. It's always going to have both a pictorial element and a written or a spoken element. Then what I'd like you to do is bear with me as we walk our way around the 6 circles, and we're going to give each circle its own distinguishing letter. We start here in the upper right with F. The next is O. The next is R. The next is E, S, and T. F-O-R-E-S-T. Well, what does that spell? Forest. Why do I like this idea of the forest? Number one, we're going to find that those 6 letters, F-O-R-E-S-T, are a really effective mnemonic for the 6 ideas that we want to try to convey vividly about our idea. But secondly, the reason I really like the metaphor is because what we're going to do is step out of the busy world and take a moment and let's stroll through some place that looks like this, taking our idea and taking the time it takes to really think it through. This is what we call the vivid forest. And for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to walk you step by step through each of the 6 letters and show what they mean with a quick example. And then for the next 6 lessons following this, we're going to go through each one of these in great detail. So today, just a quick summary to get ourselves oriented in the vivid forest. F. What I'd like you to do is write the word form. F stands for form. And in order to make that vivid, I'd like you to draw a little picture. In this case, I'd like you to draw a square. And if you can, turn it into a 3-dimensional cube. Because what we want to do with form is take ideas that are vague and actually give them physical form that our mind can wrap itself around, similar to what I did with the American Accounting Association and the Beehive. Here's an example of why form is important. What is the form of a business? Well, when most people these days are putting together a business, the standard thing to do is to write a business plan, which looks something like this. And it's got a long table of contents, and it's got many, many ideas. Now, this is a wonderful piece of homework. A business plan is a very important thing to put together. The trouble is, if you're asking someone for money, nobody is really going to take the time to read through an entire business plan anymore. People want to know, okay, that's great, but tell me, what is really the form of your idea? What is it really about? Tell me quickly, back of the napkin style, elevator pitch style, what is your business really about? We'll go through the details later. Here's something else that has form. For those of you from the United States, you might recognize this as what we used to call a TV dinner. So this is actually the form of a meal. Your meat would go in here, your potatoes would go in here, and your vegetables would go in here. Wasn't much of a meal, but boy did it sure have form. Now, for those with more sophisticated taste, our old TV dinner tray is very similar to what we would call the Japanese bento box. The idea that my meal now has form. I have a main course, I have fish, I have my rice over here, what have you. I've given structure to something that was otherwise very lumpy. Now this is interesting because we can actually do this for a business. And a real favorite book of my own lately is something called Business Model Generation, where Alexander Osterwalder and his co-authors actually created a kind of a bento box for how to describe the form of a business. And what they did is they said, let's break up all of the activities of a business into 9 separate components. And we can address each one of those components one by one. And one of the ways to generate quickly an idea for a business is to take what this is called the business model canvas, this very lovely form for thinking about a business, and put your various ideas into the boxes and then start to see how they relate. So when I talk about form, I mean things like this. Give physical form and shape to our idea. That was F. The next one, O, stands for only essentials. Only the essentials. And the picture I'd like to draw for this one is give us a little drop of water, or perhaps a little drop of oil. A vivid idea is one that is presented initially with only the essentials. I did some work recently with people in the United States Navy, and they explained to me that there is an acronym that is used in the United States Navy to help people think through how to deliver a message. And the acronym is BLUF, B-L-U-F, which stands for bottom line up front. Very idiomatic, but what it really means is, look, if you're going to deliver a message, give me the bottom line, the most important part, the takeaway. Give me that up front. Do not give me the entire message. Give me the bottom line. Give me the conclusion first. And then if I find your message interesting, I will go ahead and give you all the time you need to go through the details. I really liked this because this is parallel to our O for delivering a vivid idea initially with only the essentials. Let me give you an example. This is an advertisement, believe it or not, for network security from a big network security company out here in Silicon Valley. And this was their explanation of their approach to internet security in an advertisement in a popular news magazine. And I thought, wow, this is really a tremendous amount of detail when what I'm really interested in is security. Where is my security represented here? There's a lot here, but I'm not sure what it means in terms of security. Let's contrast that with an advertisement that came out recently from a little internet company called Google, where they were talking about their internet security process, and they said, we have two-step verification. It's first you have to get past the bear, and then you have to escape from the snake pit. Two-level security. Talk about bottom line up front. Our security system has two components, a big bear and a snake. Now look, nobody actually thinks that Google has a bear and a snake, but what we do come away thinking and remembering is, boy, that was sure a pretty interesting idea to security. I'm going to remember that one. Next on our Vivid Forest, R stands for recognizable. Recognizable. And in this particular case, draw a little stick figure the back of your own head, and imagine if you were looking in a mirror, you'd see yourself. What I mean by this is that a vivid idea is one that the first time we see it, we don't say, wait a minute, what's that? We say, oh, I recognize that idea. Let me give you an example. This is pulled from a document recently from a company I worked with that was talking about business strategy. And they were saying, here's how we represent business strategy. It has something to do with sustained growth and market leadership that goes in this circle that does this, and each one of those circles spins this thing. And I'm thinking, you know what? I've done a lot of business strategy work with people, and it doesn't look anything like this. I don't understand what this is about. This is not This is not recognizable in any visceral or vivid way. By contrast, let's look at this picture for a moment. I think we all recognize what this is. No joking. This is a picture of the ocean. This, of course, was the title for the most successful business strategy book of all time, called Blue Ocean Strategy. Now, I'll tell you that in Blue Ocean Strategy, there's almost nothing that has to do with oceanography or anything else about oceans. But the reason why this is so compelling is because strategy is a very complex and multi-layered concept. It's very hard to grab onto and say what is strategy, but oceans are very easy to understand what they are, especially because they represent opportunity, openness, exploration, and just the fascination of imagining what's out there beyond the horizon. When these two authors, W. Kim and Rene Maubon, put together Blue Ocean Strategy, they really seized on the idea of taking something difficult to recognize and aligning it to something very easy to recognize, the ocean, and out of that got the #1 best-selling business strategy book of all time. Interesting. E in Forest stands for evolving. And to represent evolving, let's draw a little square that kind of softens up and becomes a circle. As our idea evolves, it can change form. What I'm saying here is that a vivid idea is one that has the chance to evolve over time. It doesn't necessarily start out saying, I'm perfect. It's actually an idea that is clear enough that everybody understands, but at the same time, people can contribute to changing it in incremental ways. One of my favorite examples of a very powerful, evolving idea was the idea of the good old parachute. The parachute was actually invented by Leonardo da Vinci way back in 1438, where Leonardo in one of his notebooks drew out, in what turned out to be pretty insightful dimensions, exactly how it might be possible to build out of linen a device to allow someone to jump off the top of a wall and, no matter how high, survive. Well, it took almost another 350 years before anyone was crazy enough to actually try it. And Frederic, I'm glad you're with us because you'll be happy to know it was a Frenchman, Lenormand, who in the year 1783 actually did build the first functional parachute and jumped with it and survived. And then, of course, in 1887, Baldwin came along and made some modifications, and the parachute became safer and more improved. And then Halbert created the parachute in 1963 that is mostly used today. This is a perfect example of an idea that's evolving, meaning this: the idea in its original form is really, really good. So what we need to do is we get it, and we just make incremental modifications to it, and it stays with us forever. S stands for spans differences. What does that mean? Well, this actually is one of the most ancient ideas of all time. I'd like you to draw a little yin-yang symbol in here. The notion here is that a vivid idea is not an idea that only says one thing. It doesn't say just black or white. A truly vivid idea is one that takes into consideration its opposite. Now, I know that that sounds very elaborate and complex and perhaps a little bit mystical, but it is actually fact. Let me show you one of the best examples. For the last 100 years, it has been a rule in automotive engineering that if you're going to build a car, the first thing you need to do is make a decision. Am I going to build a car which is very powerful, or am I going to build a car which is highly efficient? Because due to the constraints of the internal combustion engine, it is impossible to build a car that is both. So I could either build a little Mini, which is very efficient and light, or I could build a big huge Hummer, which is very heavy but very, very powerful. Well, the idea of spans difference takes a different approach. It says it's not just this or this. What would happen if we tried to build a car that did both, that was both efficient and powerful? What would it take to change the way we think about things to say it's not one or the other, but it's actually both? Well, we have an example of this recently because a couple of gentlemen here in the Bay Area looked at these two different this way of thinking about cars and realized that the reason this either or existed was because of the limitations of the power plant. that we were putting into a car by burning gasoline directly. It's either efficient or powerful, but never both. So they came up with an idea of the Tesla, which is, of course, more powerful than most sports cars and far more efficient than most efficient cars, because they said, let's just put an electric engine in the car. And the solution was not to say, let's build a car which is one or the other, but let's build a car that is both efficient and powerful. And this brings us to our last idea. T stands for targeted. And the picture I'd like you to draw to accompany this one to make it vivid is I'd like you to draw a little target, perhaps with an arrow flying towards it. Here's the thought. We've been in the vivid forest for a while with our idea, whatever it was. Let's say we started with this idea. We gave it form. We thought through, how do I find only its essentials? How do I make it recognizable? How can I make my idea evolve? How can I make my idea even more interesting by making sure that it spans differences? But these are all things that we were able to do more or less by ourselves in the quiet and solitude of our visual forest. Maybe with our team, maybe with a few colleagues, maybe with our client. But what we really think about when we get to this last one, targeted, is now we look outward and we say, okay, who is this idea for? And how might I want to think about making sure that it is targeted to that person in a way that they're going to appreciate? Best example, what is this? Well, clearly it's a cup of coffee. And back in the good old days, this is something that you could probably buy for 25 cents or maybe 50 cents, and there it was, plain old cup of coffee. But it started to dawn on people over time that if you targeted that cup of coffee, you realize that you've got this kind of person who likes their coffee this way, then you've got this kind of person who likes her coffee this way, and then you've got another person over here who really likes his coffee a different way, and you've got another person over here who really, really wants coffee in another way, and guess what? Each one of these people is willing to pay to have the type of coffee that they really want. What would happen if we took this cup of coffee and targeted how we delivered it to each of these different individuals in a way that would appeal to them? What might that start to look like? Interesting. This is exactly what Starbucks has done. The most successful retail food chain globally in history has been able to say, let's take that simple, generic, standard cup of coffee and make sure that we make a version of it which is targeted to each individual level of taste, what everybody wants, and all of a sudden what was an interesting business becomes a fascinating business. That's what I mean by a targeted idea. So, in summary, you've just drawn right along with me the vivid forest. Form, only essentials, recognizable, evolving, spans differences, and targeted. In closing, what we're going to find over the next 6 sessions is how to take our initial pile of coal, lumpy inspiration for an idea, and walk it one by one through these 6 locations in the forest and come up with our diamond. The result? We'll have an idea which is shockingly clear. We will have tremendous confidence in our idea because we have walked it all the way through this journey. And because we have such confidence and our idea is so clear, our ability to persuade, our ability to confidently, convincingly share our idea with someone else is going to be really remarkable because we will know it so incredibly well from having gone through the vivid forest. Little bit of homework for you. This is the first time I imagine most of you have been introduced to the idea of the vivid forest. So what I'd like us to do for our homework this time is just think about it a little bit. I just want you to practice a little bit of what it means to think about the vivid forest. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to choose one of these statements. The best things in life are free. How about this one? Nothing washes away troubles like a good night's sleep. Or the third one, a dog is a human's best friend. Or if you're not a dog person, if you really want to substitute in cat, go ahead and do that. So what I'd like you to do is pick one of those 3 and imagine, if you could, how you would represent that idea by using at least 3 of the letters of the forest. What might be the form of this idea? How would I make this idea recognizable? How would I make this idea evolve? How would I make this idea like a Tesla so that it's not just one thing or the other thing, but it's actually a combination of both? This is a big conceptual exercise because we haven't spent a lot of time going through the forest yet, but I'd like you to try, and I think that you'll have a good time doing it. I want to thank you so much for the time you've given me to walk through the Vivid Forest. The Vivid Forest is probably one of my favorite things that I've had a chance to work on, and for all those examples that I showed you earlier, every one of them I developed by walking my way through, very quickly, the Vivid Forest. Before we go, let's do a little bit of student work. I know that we've got a couple of people who shared some magnificent things with me. First off, I want to start with Jocelyn. So Jocelyn, I'm going to turn on your phone. Jocelyn, can you hear me okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
I certainly can. So Jocelyn, let me review really quickly. The goal was to be vivid in our thinking, to take a sort of a written idea and come up with a visual hummingbird view of it. So why don't you take us through the quote you found and how you drew it?
So I love Albert Einstein and all of his very elegant quotes, and I found this one that's, it's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer. So I started thinking about that, and I started very simply with the different pieces of it. The who was Albert Einstein and other people. The what were problems and solutions to the problems. Then there was a variable of time and intelligence. And I was then I tried to lay out the problem in different formats. I didn't know if I was going to do quadrants and try to capture intelligence and time and the different people all in one. And then I decided that was getting too jumbled up. So I made a little assumption box down in the corner. Those are all the little characters. And we're assuming that they're all of the same intelligence.
Okay.
And then as I, time on the x-axis, just had all the different little people kind of thinking and sorting through a problem. And as you see over time, people drop out of the problem-solving process. And at the end, you're left with Albert and his solution to the problem.
That's fantastic. I love it. It's wonderful. And you're seeing the people drop away. They're all of equal intelligence. The only difference is the wherewithal to stay with it over time. That's brilliant. That's really brilliant. I'm going to wrap up the session now, and I just want to thank you all. Hey, thank you all for another great lesson. This is Dan signing off from the Napkin Academy, but don't go away. Now on our new platform, you can still submit your homework. Debbie, our community manager, is going to join you right now to show you exactly how to do that, and I really encourage you, do your homework. Okay, take it away, Debbie. See you soon.
We hope you enjoyed this Napkin Academy classic video. We've made it easier than ever to share your homework. After you've completed your homework and have a JPEG or PNG file saved on your computer, come back to this course. Once you're back here, scroll to the bottom of the screen, and in the comments box, you can add a comment. I'm just going to call this one My Homework. You can also add images by clicking on the Insert Edit Image button here. In the source box, click on the file. In the Images window, click on Upload, and then click on Add Files. This is going to take you to your computer where you can search for your images. I'm just going to search for mine in Pictures, and I'm going to choose this image here. You can also add multiple images here. Click Upload. After the upload is complete, click Close. Then scroll down, and you'll see that the last image is here, and it's checked. This is the one we just uploaded. Click Insert. I suggest in the Dimensions box you change the maximum to 1200 pixels and leave the Constrained Proportions box checked. You can also add an image description here if you'd like. Click OK. You'll see that your image has been added to your comment. And now the last step, the most important one, make sure that you click the green comment button here to upload your homework to the Napkin Academy. We hope to see your homework soon.